I was very committed to listening to the executives, hearing them out while I was doing my initial discovery period to understand what the problems were.
You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, a podcast geared towards marketing professionals in higher education. This show will tackle all sorts of questions related to student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and so much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where the industry is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. My name is Troy Singer, and I'm here with my co-host, Bart Kaler. And today we get to interview a wonderful higher ed marketer and a wonderful human being. Her name is Anna-Maja Dahlgren, and she is the Director of University Marketing for Loma Linda University. And I will admit from the very beginning, this is a relationship that Bart has, and I would love for him to describe Anna-Maja to our listeners.
Anna-Maja is such a treat. She's a wonderful person, as you've pointed out. I've gotten to know her over the past 18 months to 2 years. I had done a little bit of work with Loma Linda University. They hired a new university marketing director, and we got a chance to get to know each other and have been working on several projects for the past 18 months. So that's full transparency that we do have that relationship. But I think that one of the things that I really wanted to bring her on the show about was there's so many people that are making the transition from outside of higher ed marketing into higher ed marketing. And that was something that I remember having a few conversations with her early on was just, hey, Bart, can you provide me some resources? Can you provide me, kind of point me in the direction of some things that I should, kind of get up to speed on? And she kind of talks about that, and not only talks about that, but also just talks about some of the soft skills that she brought to the table that really have helped her to propel where she is at Loma Linda University and has really propelled a lot of the success that we've done together.
Yes, and as we can imagine, when you say 18 months ago, that's right around when the pandemic hit. So She had to use a lot of those skills in a different environment under different conditions that she wasn't used to doing it within. And she shares a lot of that with us. Yeah. So now we present to you Anna-Maja Dahlgren. It is my pleasure to welcome Anna-Maja Dahlgren to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. She is currently the Director of University Marketing at Loma Linda University. I think this is going to be a very warm and spirited interview. Welcome, Anna-Maja.
Thank you, Troy. It's really wonderful to be here.
For the record, you and Bart do have a working relationship, and I am now starting to get to know you a little bit better and really appreciate some of the things that we're getting ready to talk about.
Great. Yes, I've enjoyed my work with Bart very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to support you all in this podcast today.
Well, I think that one of the things I wanted to talk about, Anna-Maja, I know that we've been working together now for almost 2 years. And I know that you came in to your role out of you didn't have higher ed background. I guess I should say that. I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people and a lot of statistics I've been reading is that education is one of the growth industries coming in the future. And there's going to be a lot of people that are transitioning from other careers into higher ed. And I'm just curious to, learn a little bit more about that journey, what that was like for you, how that played out. And just the types of things that you needed to do, the skills that you needed to bring to the table that probably were not on your resume that kind of required you, especially getting started like a couple weeks before COVID hit.
Wow. Yeah, Bart, taking me back to that time really just opens my heart, because if anyone is interested in making a shift from healthcare into higher ed or any other industry for that matter, I highly recommend it. I am a continuous learner. I love learning new things. And I got to a point where I really wanted to challenge myself. And it happened also at that time that my mom ended up with a TIA. And for health reasons, or for her health reasons, I decided I wanted to move closer to her. And I ended up applying to Loma Linda University and their open position for a director at the university. It's been an incredible journey. I've learned so much. I'm very grateful to help them in their specific strategic objectives right now.
I know part of that too is just the idea that, I mean, certainly marketing applies across industries. I mean, and I think what's interesting sometimes is we talk about B2B marketing, we talk about B2C marketing. In higher ed, it's a little, there's a kind of a difference in that. Cause I mean, yes, it's B2C, but there's a lot of nuances involved because it's not like, and you and I have talked about this before, because just so everybody understands, Loma Linda University it's a university hospital. And so not only is it the university that is one of the larger faith-based institutions of graduate study, so med school, school of pharmacy, dental school, 8 different colleges under Loma Linda University. There's also a major, one of the larger hospitals in Southern California that's a part of Loma Linda University as well, the healthcare side. And so making the shift from kind of this patient focus where you're helping people know that when the time is right, that they should come to the hospital, or you're following up on that from a marketing standpoint, to then helping someone with the journey of going into higher education, which for a lot of people is one of the largest investments they'll ever make in their life. And it's also an investment that's many times made through a lot of emotion that plays into the discussions and the conversations that we have. And so I'm just curious, what are some of those skill sets that you were able to kind of bring into that, and maybe there's an example that we can talk about too, that kind of helped you kind of make that transition and learn those different things.
The interesting thing about higher ed that is different from healthcare is that it's harder. You have longer lead times on the conversion from the time somebody expresses interest, and you're actually doing a sales process different from healthcare, right? The customer is going to give you a down payment on their education. They're giving you a tuition payment. So I have drawn on my sales background from years ago, and also how to communicate with people at every step of the buying behavior, the buying process, right? That customers are making. I actually love how I'm able to really bring my whole marketing, communications, and sales experience into full circle here from that perspective.
I think that's great, Anna-Maja. And I know that when you and I first met, you were kind of hired to build this marketing team from scratch. I mean, there was no one there, and the recommendation was to have a university-focused higher ed marketing team. You came and did that. And obviously, we've been working together for a while, and I've seen the success of what you've done over the course of time, and you're continuing to grow that team out, and it's becoming bigger and more hires, and it's an excellent team. What do you kind of attribute some of the success to that, especially as you related to the executive team? I mean, you're reporting directly to the executive team many times on your process because you were the team.
Yeah, Bart, as I think back on all the things that I've ever done in my life, it has prepared me for this. And it may not necessarily be some marketing experience or something related to my job. In fact, one of the skills that I draw upon here to answer your question is the work that I've done spiritually, and an attribute of the 5 mindfulness trainings that Thich Nhat Hanh has put together. Deep listening is one of them. And I was very committed to listening to the executives, hearing them out while I was doing my initial discovery period to understand what the problems were so that I could come back and give some practical advice. In my experience, growing up into marketing leadership, I realized that I was talking too much, that I needed to listen more. And I think that really played out well for me here in this example, because the executives were telling me we need a branding campaign. And my marketing mind is like, no, we don't need a branding campaign yet. We need to fix the website. We need to fix the intake process, the RFI form, and how we're converting leads and all of that. But my listening led me to a compromise. And so that compromise turned out to be a campaign called Heroes Made Here that we took to market. It was the first campaign in the institution's 115 years at the time, the 115 years in existence. They had never done a branding campaign. And just as COVID hit, I was hired. So we started to work with you, Bart, on the Heroes Made Here campaign as part of a manifestation of my deep listening and ability to compromise on what I would say would be a non-starter from a traditional marketing kind of theoretical or academic point of view.
Yeah, Anna-Maja, I think that's your point with the example of the Heroes Made Here campaign. I mean, that what a fun campaign that was, and I think it was quite timely. I mean, I remember you and I first met in March, and you kind of at that time said we've got a campaign that we need to do, and so as we started working on the campaign, more and more started happening with COVID. More and more started playing out, and I remember driving through my local town, and seeing something about a handwritten sign on a doctor's office or on the hospital that said, healthcare heroes. And, that was kind of a lot of what was going on in the culture at the time was that, no longer, I remember seeing memes on LinkedIn and Twitter with, all these superheroes bowing down to the doctors and nurses walking by. And it just seemed like a natural play that, well, here's a university that produces doctors, pharmacists, healthcare heroes. I mean, the entire Loma Linda University is all about healthcare. And boy, wouldn't that be a way to kind of lean into that? And our team obviously took and ran with that, both of our teams. And I think that it really played out well. And tell me a little bit about what that was like as you were leading that, because I mean, the size of your team transitioned over the course of that campaign. You were working not only with your team, but also a lot of support within the hospital's healthcare marketing team. And I'm sure that a lot of those soft skills that you talked about with the listening and other things had to play into that. So tell us a little bit about how that specifically came about.
Bart, those were very exciting times. That was a lot of fun. And I remember having very specific conversations with every member of the executive team around that particular slogan, Heroes Made Here, because as a faith-based academic services or health sciences center, we don't think of ourselves as heroes. The only hero is Jesus Christ. And so it was a very interesting conversation to look at ourselves as heroes. And in the end, the work, the story that we decided to tell about being available to patients in a way in their toughest moments when they're sickest and they needed us, that is what a hero meant to us in this campaign. And we have since really helped that story come alive using our alumni. And we've done several video stories now of our alumni doing heroic work in our community and giving back in their service work.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that it goes back to what you said, listening. And I remember having those conversations with you about how can we, there's a lot of concerns that the administration has, the executive team has with we don't want to become, prideful. We don't want to present ourselves as prideful. It goes against who we are. And I totally agree. And I think that the way that was your listening and your patience and the way that you kind of led that and led those conversations, I think really impacted a lot. And I think that it's, we're working on some other things now, and I won't get into details of that, but it's set us up for a trajectory that I think is very strong. And I think that branding campaign has made a big difference for Loma Linda University.
Bart, as we're talking now, you're reminding me that a week ago I was meeting with the officers and deans, and I announced that we were going to sunset the Heroes Made Here campaign. And one of the officers said, "Wait, do we really want to do that?" It was so good. Are we sure? And so that was a really sweet moment for me, that after all the hard work we did with deep listening and understanding what the executives were trying to achieve and using the creativity of marketers to really represent the brand in the right way, we nailed it. We hit a home run. So congratulations to us.
That's right. That's right. That's great. Very good.
Anna-Maja, during our conversation, you referred to that you have a vast background in marketing, sales, also outside of higher ed within medical. So as I ask you the question that we usually ask, if there's a recommendation that marketers could glean from you, whether it's an idea that's current or maybe from that vast background of something that they could implement immediately that you've had success with or believe they could have success with, what would that recommendation be?
Troy, the thing I would suggest is that people start talking less and listening more. I learned this very valuable lesson when I went into Six Sigma lean training. And there's a book I'd like to recommend everyone to read. It's called The Coaching Habit: Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever.
Anna-Maja, thank you very much for that book recommendation. And also, thank you very much for being so present with us and bringing not only tangible recommendations, but also your very transparent spirit to the Higher Ed Marketer podcast. Bart, do you have any final thoughts before we wind up this episode?
Yeah, Troy, thank you. I just really appreciate Anna-Maja and her, as you kind of pointed out, just the transparency and the authenticity that she brought to the show. I think that a lot of us as higher ed marketers, whether we're transitioning from outside careers into higher ed, or if you've transitioned over from the advancement department to marketing, there's a lot of different things that we can take away from this. There's certainly skills that you'll need to learn. And, I'm hoping that this podcast provides you a lot of those as you listen to the different episodes. But I think that one of the things I really want to take away from our conversation today with Anna-Maja is the fact that a lot of the soft skills that you need are just being able to slow down, to listen, to be able to understand other people, that idea of empathy. We've talked about that in several other podcasts. I know that when we spoke with Courtney Cannon on an episode, just a couple episodes earlier than this one, she was helping us as a deaf person herself, helping us understand how to better market to that audience who might need accessible and additional help with the marketing. And I think that she really came down to, if you remember, Troy, at the very end of the episode, she was talking about how empathy was the number one skill set that you needed.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so true. And a lot of what Anna-Maja has talked about today was the idea of listening and talking less. It comes down to empathy and comes down to understanding and really putting yourself in the seat of, in the shoes of the other people, whether it's the executive team, whether it's other members on your marketing team, or whether it's actually those prospective students that we're marketing to. So I just really enjoyed our conversation today. And I really think that it's been a real blessing to be able to have this conversation. So thank you, Anna-Maja.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, Troy.
It's our pleasure. The Higher Ed Marketer podcast is sponsored by Kaler Solutions, an education marketing and branding agency, and by Think Patented, a marketing execution company specializing in printing and mailing solutions for higher ed institutions. On behalf of my co-host Bart Kaler, my name is Troy Singer. Thank you for joining us.
You've been listening to The Higher Ed Marketer. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening with Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to leave a quick rating of the show. Simply tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. Until next time.